The season is done, let's hit Perry speak about things. Starting with McLaren. Congratulations on the Constructors' Championship, your first one since 1998. That's before I was even alive, quite frankly. And before quite a few drivers on the 2025 grid were even alive. It's before both of their current drivers were even alive, for God's sake. I mean, McLaren, despite the mistakes and despite the errors they've had, I think they can be quite happy with their season. I mean, Constructors' Championship, second in the Drivers' Championship with Norris, his best season to date in Formula 1. Could have been better, as I said, with the mistakes, but they were kind of learning on the job, learning at the front, but whatever, I'll get to that when I touch on 2025 in a minute. Their comeback has been kind of crazy. Over last winter, then they were kind of just a bit stagnant. They kind of, in my opinion, started this year in the kind of the same way they ended last year, and then they brought that Miami upgrade, and since then they've been kind of the fastest or one of the fastest as everything just closed up. Arguably, with all that though, they should have won the Constructors sooner or had been in a better position points-wise coming into the final race. But well, at the end, when it comes to that final race, Abu Dhabi, the fact that their lead was 21 points instead of like 40 something or 30 something didn't really matter when it came to Leclerc's red penalty, but I'll get to Ferrari in a second. McLaren are in a good place, really. This year they proved that they can get back to the front. They have, a good driver lineup, they have a good team of people, and they've proved that they can win races. They won 5 races this year, multiple podiums, and all their hard work has paid off, and all the, I don't want to say torture, but all of the hardship, I'll say, that McLaren and you McLaren fans went through with the doldrums of the McLaren Honda days, and then the 2022 slump, and then the crappy beginning to 23. It's all paid off in the end. I will admit, McLaren have surprised me a little bit though this season, because as I said, I don't think anybody could have expected them to be the ones winning the Constructors, especially after Red Bull started the season. But they did win the Constructors. I have no idea how my camera angle is, by the way. I hope it's okay. But McLaren did win the Constructors. They have been quite surprising. But look, my expectations for McLaren, I didn't put them too high because I did not trust them over the winter. After the last 2 winters, they fell off. I didn't trust them over last winter, so my expectations weren't overly high, but then they proved me wrong. They proved, I think, a lot of people wrong, probably, because as I said, I don't think anybody could have expected them to end up being as good as they were this season, but they've got back to the front. We have McLaren versus Ferrari again, and next season, well, you can probably add Red Bull back into the mix, maybe Mercedes, but I don't trust that team. In terms of looking ahead to 2025, it's gonna be interesting to see, I think, how Norris copes. Because I think we're all expecting a competitive fight at the front next year. I mean, it's the last year of these regulations, it's gonna be close at the front. I mean, we could realistically speaking, unless someone finds something massive over the winter and a team gets a big advantage, realistically speaking, we could have anywhere from a 2-way fight for the driver's title to, hell, maybe even a 4 or 5-way fight for the driver's title, which I'm pretty sure we'd all probably hope for more towards a 4 or 5. Like, imagine if we had a 5-way fight for the driver's title. Oh my god. Anyway, like, it's fair to say McLaren and Norris have made some mistakes this year. And I mean, that's always gonna be, everyone makes mistakes. They're only humans. And they're kind of going to learn on the job, really, on terms of, like, fighting at the front. With next year looking to be just as competitive, if not more. If it is a multi-way fight for the title, I'm keen to see how Norris and McLaren cope with that. If they'll look at this year, 2024, and they will learn from it and not make the same mistakes next year as they did this year. Norris does really need to work on lap 1 when he's starting on pole though. Or just work on lap 1 in general, getting off the line. And I'm also very keen to see where Piastri fits into all this. I mean, he made a step from year 1 to year 2, and he's probably going to be making another step into year 3. So that might be one to keep an eye on. Now on to Ferrari. Ignore the change in location, please. I'm traveling. First of all, it was really nice to see Charles and Arthur on track together in FP1 in Abu Dhabi. First time we've seen brothers on track in a session together as teammates in F1 history. That was really nice to see. But Ferrari, so close, yet so far. If I'm McLaren, I'm glad that Ferrari dropped points, several points this season, particularly, let's say several points, particularly like that run from like Canada to Silverstone where they were really rocky. They slipped back like 4th best, but like as Will Buxton said on F1 TV in their post-race show last weekend, brilliant job from Ferrari to find their way out of that and come back to so nearly winning the championship. They really came back fighting from it, so well done to them. And honestly, Ferrari should be really happy with their season because they are very much back at the front. They're fighting at the front for kind of the race winning positions, the podiums, the wins, despite their, you know, aforementioned rough patch that they came back from. Missing out by 14 points, it really sucks. But they went out fighting. They did not go down without a fight. They didn't give up until the very end. And on that, oh my god, Leclerc's race in Abu Dhabi. One of, if not the driver of the season. That thing, you can put that against Max in Brazil for race of the season, honestly. Like, it was like he was against 0% AI on the opening lap. It was insane. I never could have predicted he would have been up to P8 by like turn 7. Away from Abu Dhabi, both drivers gave it their all season. They finished 3rd and 5th in the Drivers' Championship. Sainz was very close to getting 4th in the end. They had a good season. They had a really good season. Both drivers were strong at various points of the year. Sainz, this has been honestly his best year with Ferrari in his 4 years with the team. He's off to Williams now. Leclerc, this has been his best season in Formula 1 to date. Well done, Ferrari, honestly. You just missed out on the championship, but well done all the same. It's been a really good year for them. Now, as for looking at next year, I am very, very keen to see how this team goes next year. Not just because, well, I'm a hello Ferrari fan, but in terms of like the dynamic between Charles and Lewis. I think qualifying wise next year is probably going to be more lopsided towards Leclerc because that man is a beast in qualifying, but regardless, race trim is where I think the most intrigue is for me, because Lewis is still very handy in races. Qualifying can be maybe a little more up and down for him these days. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but he still can do the job in qualifying. But I would say Lewis has become a bit better in the races than in qualifying these days. And in terms of that, with race trim next year, going to be so interesting to see how they stack up against each other in the races. And also how Ferrari handle having really 2 number 1 drivers and in a season that is gonna be really competitive probably. Onto Red Bull, another team that has a contender for race of the season, drive of the season, sorry, now towards Max in Brazil, as I just mentioned. Like Max, as I've said in previous videos, he's just been Max this year, you know, he's been at the level you kind of expect him to be. He's had a few more rocky moments, you know, I'm thinking Mexico comes to mind specifically, but he was still up there. He's still the driver that came out on top in the championship, and that's despite not necessarily having the best car all year. Well, they did still win the Drivers' Championship. I'm sure Red Bull can't be completely satisfied with their season, but we're missing out on the Constructors' Championship, falling back to 3rd. They've been caught by Ferrari, caught by McLaren. Mercedes are getting there. They're kind of there. I don't know, I don't really trust Mercedes, to be honest. Yeah, Red Bull, pretty good year, honestly. I mean, they're still fighting up at the front, you know, but I mean, it's kind of been more Max making the difference than kind of than anything else, if you know what I mean. Like, the car is still not overly bad, but it is kind of more Max making the difference, and they kind of rely on that forever. And honestly, with the way McLaren and Ferrari are going, they're gonna have their work cut out for them next year. As for Checo, yikes, he did not have a very good year. I don't know how many points he scored in the second half of the season, but it was not much. I'm pretty sure he only scored 1 point across the final triple header. Well, I don't know how many Max scored. He scored, what, 10 in Vegas. He scored 25 for the win in Qatar, however many. He scored probably somewhere upwards around about 30, 40 points. Sergio Perez, good lord. I mean, you don't expect him to match Max, no one does, but you expect him to be better than he's been, you know? And I do not see him in that seat next year. The word online is it'll probably be Liam Lawson in that seat. It would be nice if Yuki Tsunoda got a shot, but it looks like it might be Liam Lawson getting the drive. If it is, then that could be quite interesting next year. Max Verstappen and Liam Lawson. Will Liam Lawson be the number 2 driver that probably Team Verstappen will hope he could be? Probably not. That could be quite interesting, because he'll want to prove himself that he should be there, and that he can, you know, win races and all that stuff. Mercedes, this team just confuses me. They have been everywhere and nowhere at the same time, honestly. Like, they've just been kind of in no man's land for a while, but then all of a sudden, for like a race or two, they'll all of a sudden be right up there, and George will be buggering off with the win up front in Vegas while Hamilton storms through to second, you know? Like, they had their high moment in the middle of the year, and that run from like Canada to Silverstone, Canada to Belgium, sorry. Well, you know, Ferrari were in their struggles. Mercedes rose up and kind of looked like, oh, they could challenge for third in the driving and the constructors, maybe even second, you know? But then things played out, they fell backwards, Ferrari rose back up, McLaren kept their stuff together, and they've just been so up and down, but at the end of it, at least Hamilton had a good final race with Mercedes, you know? At least there was that. Hamilton in Abu Dhabi, that was kind of like proof that the old Hamilton is still there. You know, the old Hamilton that we all kind of know, the great racer, the one that isn't down in the dumps, you know. But the drives him and Leclerc had in Abu Dhabi, bring on Ferrari in 2025. And as for Mercedes in 2025, this is an interesting team. Another one I'm going to be keeping an eye on. How will Kimi Antonelli do? Coming in, of course, in a kind of top team, mid-top team, if you know what I mean. I mean, top team by their standards, but like their historical standards of so many championships, but performance-wise, kind of more towards the back of the top. You know what I mean, kind of mid-top towards the top, but kind of up and down a bit, if that makes any remote sense whatsoever. I suppose Mercedes not being quite as good as they have been before, maybe that will be a bit more pressure off for Kimi, you know, and I mean, I kind of hope that we can all agree to give him the space that rookies need when they first come in, and if he doesn't perform immediately out of the gates, don't slander him online. And also, how can George Russell cope now being fully in that team leader role? Lewis Hamilton gone from the team. Russell is now going to get that team leader role he's been probably wanting for several years now. And just, well, who will be the better driver in the long run? And now Aston Martin, I'm not gonna lie, I hardly noticed these guys this year. They were just a bit meh this year. Alonso, he was a bit up and down. He had his strong moments. He had some not so bad races. He also had some stinker forget about it weekends. Stroll has been Stroll. I was like, going in on Lance Stroll has been done to death, but I'm gonna save that for a video another time, later this week, early next week. I kind of mind when it's going up. But regardless, they've just been a bit underwhelming. Well, I say they've been underwhelming, but underwhelming is my expectations for them this year were for them to be kind of there in the midfield fight, and they were. So I mean, that way then they met expectations? I don't know. This team is just kind of, I can't help but feel like they're kind of more looking to 2026 than right now, because I mean 26, then it's the new regulation cycle, they're gonna have a new PU supplier in Honda who've been not so bad with Red Bull, and they're gonna have Adrian Newey, he's not gonna be some magic solution to all their problems, of course, and you know, like, you need more than just flour to bake a cake, for example, you know, just as a random example, but he definitely can help put them into a good position, if you know what I mean. I just really don't have that much to say on Aston Martin, because they have just been that little bit underwhelming and just invisible this year. Frankly, I think one of their seats is being wasted, but given that driver is the owner's son, I don't think that's changing unless Lance wants to go. Alpine, given how they started the season, I think they should be quite happy with how they ended up going. I did not expect the Brazil double podium, but mind you, I don't even think they expected that heading into the Grand Prix. Pierre Gasly's brilliant end of the season. P3 qualifying in Las Vegas, P5 in the race in Qatar, keeping Sainz behind him lap after lap. Another strong points finish in Abu Dhabi. He was running right up there up towards, like, in the top 5 for quite a while in that race, and apparently no crash damage. So that was the Pierre Gasly of like 2021 we saw coming out at the end of the season. He was brilliant. He kind of carried Alpine there at the end of the year. The good thing for Alpine about this year is they came on form, or well, they scored the big points when it mattered the most. Towards the arse end of the season, that's where, if you're going to score big points, do it towards the end of the year. Is arguably it matters more how you end the year than how you start the year. What matters with how you start the year is how you respond to that start, not necessarily how you start, if you can what I mean. It's something I've said before, you know? But it's definitely been an up and down year for Alpine. I mean, they started like at the back, and now they've ended more in that midfield fight. Well, in the midfield fight, which I don't know how many people saw that coming, but mind you, that's just how unpredictable Formula 1 has been this year and how close it's ended up being. I kind of expect them to probably just kind of stay as they are into 25 and just kind of stay in about that midfield fight. They're going to have one new driver they're actually promoting one of the rookies up, one of their junior program drivers up into the team, which is a very rare thing. You don't really see that. And looking to 26, they're gonna have a new power unit in Mercedes engines again. Renault is going, they're gonna take Mercedes engines, and that could put them in good standing if it's to be believed that Mercedes are gonna have a good engine in 26. Haas, I think, have been the biggest good surprise team this year. Like, I did not expect them to do this well. It was definitely a surprise when Steiner got booted earlier in the season before the season started, which that feels like it was a lifetime ago, quite frankly. But it was the right choice. Komatsu, he's changing Haas, and for the better, I'd say. They've brought more upgrades this year. They've brought upgrades more regularly than they have in the past, which has been a big change. They've got the partnership with Toyota now. Komatsu seems to know what he's doing. He's got his head on straight. He knows what he's doing. He was, I think, the right choice to bring into that team principal role to give the team a refresh. And especially ahead of, the next new regulation cycle coming in 26, which I think that could be a big test for him to see how things go for Haas leading into that and how they end up being in 26 and how he handles it, if you kind of know what I mean, where they end up in the pecking order and all that. But yeah, kudos to Haas. I didn't expect them to do as well as they did this year, but they brought out the back. I was expecting them to be more towards the back, but no, they were solidly in the midfield fight, so round of applause to Haas. And next year, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that team, if they can kind of keep this up and stay right in that midfield fight with a whole new driver lineup of some good experience in Ocon and a rookie and Behrman, who has impressed this year. But I'll touch on Behrman this year in another video. But honestly, round of applause to Haas. They had a good year. And now for Red Bull Light. Thank you to this comment for the name idea. Still think Daniel Ricciardo deserved a better send-off, but mind you, we all think that. But all in all, they've been a bit quiet this year, honestly. I didn't really notice them too much, to be honest. They had their high moments, they had their strong points finishes. Monaco, they had a couple more throughout the season. Daniel Ricciardo in the sprint in Miami, for another example. But overall, they've just been a little bit more quiet, kind of like where you would expect them to kind of be. Around that kind of P8 kind of region in the Constructors' Championship. Next year looking like they very well could have a new lineup. If Liam Lawson gets recalled to Red Bull, then it could be Isaac Hadjar coming in. It seems like is the talk online. It'd be interesting to see how he could do in Formula 1 and how if he could go through the same thing that Yuki did, if you know what I mean, and kind of just calming down a little bit, because if you watch Formula 2, then you might know that he's had some fire. He can be a bit fiery on the radio. But overall, they were just a little bit quiet. Williams! Caramba, the amount of crash damage this team had this year is insane. From all three drivers they had. I'd be very interested to see what the numbers are for how close Williams have ended up being to the cost cap. Or over it, quite frankly. These crashes have cost Williams so much money. Congratulations on winning the Constructors Championship. But this team disappointed me this year. I expected a bit more from them. Of course, all the crashes they had have not helped, but regardless, I expected more. Albon, kind of more specifically, I expected more from him. He's a driver that is rated kind of highly, but he was a bit underwhelming. And he kind of maybe had his nose put out of joint a little bit, maybe when Franco came in, because Franco came in all guns blazing and impressed off the back. Of course, he ended up having a few expensive crashes, but I mean, well, that's Formula 1. But it's not been a brilliant year for Williams, that's for damn sure. It's not been as bad as, say, 2019 or 2020, but it's not been great for them. But this is one team where I'm really, really interested to see about next year, specifically with the dynamic between the drivers. Because you're gonna have Albon, who's been, like, not to take anything away from Albon and his talent, and not to, insult Latifi or, the other one, Sargent, but Albon, over his time at Williams, the only time he's really kind of, so far, faced a big challenge from a teammate is when Franco came in. With Latifi and Sargent, he kind of had it easy for, 2.5 seasons. And his teammate's going to be Carlos Sainz, who's going to be out to prove himself as the stronger Williams driver. He's gonna be out to try and beat Albon. He's probably also maybe gonna be a bit salty from not getting a top team drive, but He made his bed, now he has to lie in it. And then finally, Sauber, I have nothing to say. I got nothing on them. They've just been there. They didn't do anything. They didn't make any noise. They were just, yeah, there. And now for your final 2024 F1 World Championship drivers and constructors standings. Max Verstappen is the champion on 437 points. Is Lando Norris finishing runner-up in 374 points. The fourth different runner-up to a Max Verstappen championship. And I saw an interesting stat on Twitter earlier from Daniel Vante, you know, the F1 stat guy. Go follow him if you don't already. But every driver that finished runner-up to Max, the next season, they finished 5th or lower in the Drivers' Championship. And someone else pointed out they also didn't win a race that season, so that may not bode too well for Lando Norris next year. Anyway, Charles Leclerc is in 3rd place on 356 points, and Oscar Piastri and Carlos Sainz round out the top 5 on 292 and 290 points. So close for Carlos Sainz in the end to that 4th place, yet so far. George Russell wins out in the battle of the Mercedes on 245 points to 223 for Lewis Hamilton. 7th place is his worst ever finish in the Drivers' Championship, while Sergio Perez is closer to you and me in the Drivers' Championship than he is to Max Verstappen on 152 points. Fernando Alonso is the first driver in the double digits on 70 points, while Pierre Gasly broke his way into the top 10 on 42 points at the end, one ahead of Nico Hülkenberg on 41 and 11. Yuki Tsunoda is on 30 points in 12th place, while it's 24 points for Lance Stroll. He has been abysmal, but we've already spoken about that. 23 points has gone the way of Esteban Ocon, who got binned off one race earlier. I still don't understand that, to be honest. And Kevin Magnussen is in P15 on 16 points. 12 points go the way of Alexander Albon in 16th place, 12 points for him, 12 points for Daniel Ricciardo in 17th. Well, it's 7 points for Oliver Behrman, who only did 3 races in 18th. 19th is Franco Colapinto on 5 points. 4 points is Zhou Guanyu and Liam Lawson in 20th and 21st. They're the last of the point scorers because Valtteri Bottas is the only driver that did the full season that is below 20th place. He's on 0 points, and Logan Sargent is in 23rd. He got booted earlier, yeah, remember him. And then Jack Doohan only did the last race, he's 24th. In the Constructors' Championship, then for the first time in 26 years, the first time in the lifetime of Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, McLaren are Constructors' Champions on 666 points. 14 points ahead of Ferrari in the end on 652 points. Red Bull have fallen back to 3rd on 589, while Mercedes are on 486, kind of in no man's land. And they are miles ahead of Aston Martin, who round at the top 5 on 94 points. About a jump from Aston to Mercedes, honestly. 65 points are going the way of Alpine. They won out in the battle for 6th in the Constructors ahead of Haas on 58 points in 7th. 46 points is what Red Bull Light had to settle on in 8th place, while 17 points are going the way of Williams, and Sauber scored in the penultimate round. They have 4 points. And that is Formula 1 in 2024 done and dusted. It's been a really good year. It's been a much better year than I think any of us expected after the first couple of races, with Red Bull dominating so much in the opening rounds. This season really came alive. 7 drivers won multiple races. That's the first time that's ever happened. It's been insane with McLaren versus Ferrari for a championship again. Same guy won the driver's title the last couple of years, but after his start of the season, that was kind of expected. It's been a really good year, honestly. It has been a really good year. And 2025, last year of the regulations, it could be just as good, if not better. I'm looking forward to it. I really am. But for now, I'm gonna go. What were your thoughts on the 2024 Formula 1 season? Let me know them down in the comments below. Drop a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new around here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.